What's going on, beautiful people? Back again with another one talking about health, wealth, happiness, success, getting money, getting rich, being successful, all the great things in life, right? And first of all, I'm gonna need you guys to do two things for me. First of all, go ahead and like and subscribe to the video if you're coming on in. And second of all, this video may be a little longer than normal, so go ahead and get you a snack or a drink and we'll jump on into this video. So yeah, man, today I wanna go over the edge, how to get an edge, right? How to put yourself at the top, right? How to separate yourself from the masses, how to, become an elite, how to get ahead of the pack, as you would say, right? And in order to get an edge, in order to put yourself, or separate yourself from the pack, you need to understand where we're going in the world, right? And it's like, well, duh, right? But you need to understand where the world is going. You need to understand where the future is going and headed. And the only way we can do that is understanding where we came from, right? And so I want to go into a little bit of a history. I got some of my favorite books down here. I'm going to be pulling them up. We're going to be talking about them a little bit, but in this video, when I talk about how to get ahead and how to grab your edge, we're only going to start from about the 1880s, and then we're going to come up from there. Really back in the day, if you really wanted to get an edge over somebody else, you needed to travel, right? The 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, all the explorers, going to new lands, getting new land, getting gold, taking over. That was how you put yourself above the rest. But we're going to start from about the 1880s, right? Okay, so the 1880s, this is when the Industrial Revolution starts to kick off. And in order to separate yourself from the pack, you needed to leave the farm, right? Everybody lived in small little towns, little villages, and you left those towns and villages, and instead of being a farmer, you went into the city, right? You went into the factories, and that is how you separated yourself from the pack. This is a good book right here, Lessons from Titans. It's talking about how all the great companies and businesses were built back in the day, right? Got another good one here. This is a crazy book right here. Titan, John D. Rockefeller, one of the greatest and most successful businessmen in America to date. Yes, their family has went underground. Yes, they're still alive today. Yes, Elon Musk is not the first trillionaire. This family, there's a bunch of different families like this one, and they've had trillions of dollars before Elon Musk was even born. But yes, that is how you separated yourself from the pack. From the late 1800s until the 1940s, you needed a job. It separated you from the people working on the farm. It's how you got ahead, right? And so after about World War II, we go into 1945 to about 1965. And this is when, everybody is back from the war if you didn't get deleted. And so people started to build families, and they started to go and work in the factories again from the 1800s to around the 50s and 60s. Just having a regular job sets you apart from everybody else, right? Having a good job with a pension, good benefits, you joined a union. That is how you separated yourself from the pack. And eventually, so many people started to pile into these factories, right? Started to pile into the industrial America that no longer guaranteed you to set you apart from the pack. And so what happened after that? This is when people started to go to school and go to college, right? This is what separated you from the pack back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, right? Again, because back then, you could have a job, you could have a pension, you had a steady paycheck coming in, you could get a house, you could build a family, all off of one check. And so the people that went to college to further their education, you didn't need to do that. So if anybody did want to do that, that is what separated you, from everybody else. It's like, wow, this person went to school, they got a degree. You didn't need to do that, right? But you did that to separate yourself from everybody else. Now you're middle management. Now you're working in the C-suite execs. You got your college degree. This was from the 1950s into the 1960s and 70s, right? A college degree is what set you apart. Right? And it's funny that I'm mentioning this because so many people today are being funneled into the school system in the 2020s, right? When that hasn't been good since the 1960s. So then what happens after that? After so many people start going to college, they start getting degrees. How do you separate yourself from the pack going forward? All right, so first it was a good job, then it was a good job plus a college degree. And now to separate yourself even further, you needed to get into real estate, right? You bought a house, you got a family, again, you're good with just a job, you're good with a college degree. But now, in order to separate yourself even more, hey, let's go buy 1 or 2 properties to rent out, to make even more money, to even more separate ourselves from the pack. And I got some of those right here as well. How to invest in real estate. Oh man, this is kind of sticky. Building wealth with real estate, one house at a time. Understanding how to do deals and cash flow properties. Understanding what percentages you need and how to actually turn a profit with the real estate. This was the 60s and the 70s and going into the 80s. That's how you separated yourself from the pack, right? So you get a good job in the 1940s, you're separating yourself. Then you go to school and get a college degree, you're separating yourself. You start getting a few properties and renting them out, you're separating yourself, right? Then we come into the 1980s. It's not just a job, a college degree, and a couple properties now. Now we're in the 1980s. How do you separate yourself from the pack? Oh, come on, or bring in, bring in the stock market, right? Now we start seeing all of these movies, Wolf on Wall Street. There's a bunch of different Wall Street movies of the 80s. You see people making millions and gajillions of dollars, driving Lamborghinis, having fun on yachts, and making all of this crazy money. That's how it was done in the 80s, was equities, the stock market. Got books on that. One Up on Wall Street. A random walk down Wall Street. Market wizards, understanding hedge funds and people that understand how to trade stocks and futures. This was how you made all of the wealth in the 80s and how you had your edge over the people that just bought a few properties, right? And so from the 1980s until around 2009, that was your edge, was the stock market. That's where it all was, right? Imagine buying companies like Apple and Microsoft and Eli Lilly and Google. Google's a little later, but all of these companies, you could have bought Apple in the 90s. You could have bought Microsoft in the 80s, right? And been, dollar cost averaging the entire time. And Apple is like one of the greatest companies of all time right now. Or you could have just did something simple and just dollar cost average into an S&P 500, right? Into an ETF, and you'd have been fine. That's how you separate yourself from the pack. It's crazy now that I know all this information, man. I just look at all the people in my family and I'm like, man, how did you guys live through all of this and you didn't do nothing? You didn't buy no houses. You didn't get into no real estate. You lived through the entire internet. The internet came out in 1994 and you didn't get into it at all. You didn't do nothing. You didn't look into how to invest, to how to get in, how you can be a part of this new wealth, right? This wealth building opportunity. Nobody did it. They just had a job, right? And again, the jobs hadn't been good since the 1940s, but that's what people knew, was just get a job. In the 1990s, right? 80s and 90s and early 2000s, just get a job. And they missed all of this. So yeah, that was your edge leading up until 2009. And then 2009, what pops on the scene? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. Now we're in the next leg of the edge, right? Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. And in order to, again, see where we're going in the future, in order to connect these dots, we need to know things like this book right here called Building the Next Era of the Internet, right? They're going over internet companies, Web3, DeFi, NFTs, all of this stuff, right? Another good book that I got this one early. It's called The Coming Wave. It talks about that's looking pretty nice right there. It's talking about all of the new technologies that people were working on, right? And this book was released in 2023. But it's going over like all of the technologies that people were working on even earlier on. All the angel investors who are getting into Uber and Lyft and things like Coinbase, all of these companies that were coming up, and more companies that are going to be going on in the future, right? You need to understand this stuff so we have an edge going forward. Understanding Web3, understanding DeFi, understanding cryptocurrencies, understanding Bitcoin. This is how you get your edge going forward. And it's never going to be the old thing, right? It's never going to be, you're not going to get an edge just by getting a good job today. You're never going to get an edge just by getting a college degree today, even though we see everybody getting funneled down into getting a college degree, right? And we still see all of these people coming out today. They have a 4-year college degree and they're working at Starbucks, or they're complaining that there's no good jobs outside, even though they're educated. That's not what it is today. It's not even real estate, right? I see a lot of people today still talking about real estate. You need to understand, that was cool back in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s when it started to go down, when stocks started to come into play, right? But now, if your average house is $400,000 or $500,000, who are you going to rent that out to? Who's got the down payment for that type of house? Who's got the down payment for 3 or 4 or 5 of those houses? Then on top of that, you got to look at demographics, right? The more we go on into the future, nobody's getting married anymore. Nobody's starting families anymore. What's the point of getting all of these single family homes if nobody's renting them out? And then they can't even afford them. They can't even afford one house, right? How are you supposed to? I was like, okay, I'm going to get a $500,000 house, and then my mortgage is going to be like $3,000, but I'm going to charge somebody $4,000. That way I can put an extra $1,000 in my pocket every month. Well, it's like, who's going to be able to afford a $4,000 rent for that house? Especially if they're not even having a family. So real estate is dead. It's dying. It's not a thing anymore. Again, now we go on to the stock market. Stocks are at all-time highs right now, right? That's not an edge anymore. Buying Apple in 2026 when you could have got in 1996 is not an edge anymore. It's over. It's not. So all of these things are starting to go down. A job is going down. A college degree has been going down. Real estate is going down. Stocks are going down. Now it's all about crypto, Bitcoin, AI. This is the new edge going forward. You need to understand these things. And before we even get onto Bitcoin, right, and cryptocurrencies, we need to understand money, right? We need to understand the history of money. The Creature of Jekyll Island, beautiful, beautiful book. Everybody needs to read this one. If you don't understand money, if you don't understand fiat, if you don't understand why we got to where we are right now, everybody's struggling, nobody can afford a house, jobs aren't paying enough, you need to understand the money system. You need to understand fiat and the dollar and the Federal Reserve. You also need to understand the hidden cost of money, understanding why life keeps getting harder on this fiat system, why you just can't get ahead even though you're working harder than your parents did or your grandparents did. You need to understand the money's broken. This is another good one. I haven't even finished this one yet. The Big Print by Larry Lepard. During COVID, I guess we can say that now, right? The government printed so much money. Right? I think we were $20 trillion in debt, and they can't even talk. They printed about $10 trillion, all from like 2020 over the next few years after that. And a lot of people were calling it a bandemic, right? Bandemic, because they was making so much money, because so much money was just getting printed out of thin air. And he talks about how this big print is coming again. Like right now, it's August 2026. And we just crossed $40 trillion, and they're talking about we're going to probably go over $50 trillion by the end of Trump's term, right? By the end of 2028. Now, where are we in 10 years from now, right? We're going to keep printing $10 trillion every few years, and the printing of money just keeps making everything in life worse. Like, where are we in 10 years from now, right? So now we come on to the edge, right? How do we have an edge today? It's still out here. It's still understanding. We come onto our edge when it comes to today. You need to understand. This is a great one. This is kind of a little bit of a harder read, or not really a harder read, but it's an intense read. This is not for beginners, but it's called The Great Harvest by Adam Livingston, and he goes over AI, labor, the job market, and how Bitcoin is the lifeline for the future and going forward into the future, right? This is another great one right here, The Bitcoin Standard by Seifu Moose. You need to understand how we got here in the first place. And this is what this book is really about. This one doesn't really go over Bitcoin too much, but it goes over the history of money, how we got to where we are, and why it's going into cryptocurrencies, why money is going digital, why it's going into Bitcoin. And this is still your edge today. And, this is one I picked up by Fred Krueger, Bitcoin 1 million. he and a bunch of the other power law guys understand that, Bitcoin right now is following a power law. There's a bunch of people that feel like that power law will be broken, or all models and charts will be broken in the future, because we've never seen a finite asset before. But even just following the power law, right now I think Bitcoin's like 70 something thousand dollars, and they're talking about it going to $1 million in about 8 years. Like, that's an edge right there, right? And so, again, not financial advice, but this is how you see your edge, right? And even when it comes to Bitcoin today, how do you know it's still an edge? It's like, well, I didn't get in 2009, I didn't get in 2010, 11, whatever, when it was 20 cents, 30 cents, $1, $100. Like, is it still an edge today? And how do you know if Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are still an edge today? It's so funny. I'll be on Facebook scrolling and I'll have crypto posts come up, and it'll be like, Bitcoin just went over this number, or Bitcoin just dumped to this number. And you just read the comments, and people are still like, Bitcoin and crypto is dumb. It's going to zero. It has no value. And this is your edge today. People are still crapping on it today. They're still poo-pooing cryptocurrencies. They're still poo-pooing Bitcoin, even though we see all of these countries mining it, like El Salvador, like the Kingdom of Bhutan. We see, Putin over in Russia just signed a cryptocurrency like laws and policy. We see the government talking about the Clarity Act, trying to get regulations around it. We see hedge funds and money management funds like BlackRock buying it. We see Michael Saylor getting into it. We see all of these other companies trying to build divisions around it. We see banks are about to start embracing it, but people online are still poo-pooing it. They're still crapping on it. They're still laughing at it. They're still saying it's dumb, even after 17 years, and it's went from 0 to 70,000, and it is being embraced by the entire world. So this is how you find your edge, right? You need to go back and look at the past, right? Where did we come from? And where are we going, in order to put the dots together to be able to make a conscious decision for the future? Understanding to separate yourself from the pack. And even right now, right, Bitcoin has made people gajillionaires and billionaires and multimillionaires. Will it do that for you in the future? Well, depends on how much money you can jam in there, right? But let's just say you're not able to jam that much money in there. Even just knowing that it's going there in the future, even just knowing the world is coming for it, even just knowing all of this regulation is coming for it, even just putting some money into it, again, not financial advice, right? But looking into it and knowing where it's going in the future, seeing that edge and being like, okay, let me take the steps now. I may not be a gajillionaire in the future in 10 years. Hey, but maybe I got $600,000-$700,000 worth. Maybe I get $800,000 worth. Maybe I got $450,000 worth after, going hard for the next 10 years. How much better would your life be in the future with $450,000? How much better would your life be with $600,000? Again, you're not a millionaire, but that's going to take the stress off of you. That's going to take pressure off of you from bills, from food, from getting a house and living, putting a roof over your head. All of this stuff is going to separate you from the pack. It's crazy, man. It's like I look at the men in my family, and I still have people in their 50s, right? I got uncles and stuff like that, and they're still telling their kids and their grandkids to go to school, go to college. And it's like, how did you live 50 years and you couldn't see nothing, right? You lived through the internet. You lived through cell phones. You lived through the beginning of crypto in 2009. You lived through real estate. I mean, hell, even if you wanted to pick up a couple properties after the market crashed in 2007, 2008, and you didn't do nothing. You didn't do nothing. You didn't take no steps. You couldn't see no edge. And then you're just still going to recommend school and college? Crazy, man. This is it. I'm like, how can you not see? How do you not have some inkling of forethought, of foresight, to be able to see the future, to be able to see the past and make decisions better for the future? And this is how you do it. Understanding the past to figure out what your edge is. Seeing where we've been, seeing what's on the decline, and understanding how to make a decision, especially still as people are crapping on it. They're crapping on AI. They're crapping on Web3. They're crapping on Bitcoin. They're crapping on crypto. And I'm not even a crypto guy, right? You see all of these Bitcoin books that I got. Bitcoin, everything divided by 21 million. The bullish case for Bitcoin. We know where I'm at. We know where I'm thinking about putting, finding my edge, right? But you have to understand where we've been and to understand where we're going to get the next edge, to separate yourself from the pack. That's what it is. And it pains me today, man. I see all of these kids in school right now, and their parents just keep pushing them into school. And I'm like, man, like, those kids are cooked. Cooked. You are cooked. Cooketh. On a high boil. You is simmering. And it's like, man, like, how can you not see where we've been to understand where we're possibly going to go? So yeah, this is how you get your edge, man. You need to understand. And again, I love reading. That's my thing, man. But you don't have to. You can just sit down. We have all of the internet, right? We have the internet. We have Google. I mean, you have ChatGPT, Grok. You can just sit down in an evening or an afternoon and just ask it questions, right? See what's going on. Just giving yourself a little bit of information, right? To understand where we're going, where we came from, and where we're going. And I'm telling you right now, again, it's not a good job. Now, again, we all do have to go outside and mine fiat, right? We got to go out and mine fiat. This is what they did in the beginning. A job was mining fiat. Then people, they mined fiat, right? They worked a summer job to go to pay for their college classes, right? They mined fiat to go to school. Then they mined fiat and they put it in houses. Then they mined fiat and they put it into stocks. And now we got to go out there and mine fiat and put it into the next edge, whatever that looks like to you. But that's where it is. But it's not, you're not just going to separate yourself from the pack just by having a good job, or just by buying a couple real estate properties, or getting a college degree, or the stocks. It's not the S&P 500 today. It's not an ETF today. That's not putting your money into Apple and Nvidia today. That's not where it is. Those edges were 10, 15, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago for real estate, 60 years ago for a good job and a college degree. That's not where the edge is today. So that is how you separate yourself from the pack. That is how you discover your edge. You need to understand the history, understand where we've been, to understand now where we are headed, where we're going. And that is how you separate yourself from the pack. Understanding that people are, whatever it is, people are still crapping on today, right? People are still crapping on Bitcoin 17 years later, still calling it a tulip, still calling it a bubble, still saying it's going to burst, still saying it's pointless, it's useless, it has no value. Yet we see the entire world is coming for it. That may be an edge. That may be an edge to say that it ain't over yet. It's not done yet. That's how you figure out, understanding the past, the history. That is how you give yourself an edge, seeing where we've been, to understand where we're going. So yeah, man, I'm going to go ahead and leave that one right there, give you guys something to think about. And if you're still on in here, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe. I'll catch you beautiful people on the next one. Peace.